C. Brown, Immaculate Home Builders, man, your pre-listing, pay-at-close renovation specialist. So when I first got into the construction industry, and this was, I don't know, 26 years ago, I could remember a lot of people talking about contractors and how it's so hard to find a good contractor and how contractors are not trustworthy and, you know, they don't finish jobs and things like that. And I was like, man, as unfortunate as that sounds, I guess it has some truth behind it. So fast forward to 26 years later, I still hear those things. Now, I am fortunate and blessed and grateful to say that I've never been sued. I've never scammed anybody. I have a level of integrity to where I do what I say I'm going to do. Does it always work out? No, I've had to fire some clients and I've had some clients to discontinue the relationship with me, which is a part of business, but I've never done anybody wrong. Nobody could ever say that Corey Brown, Immaculate Home Builders, or any name that I was a part of scammed anybody. So how does that happen, right? How do we people run into contractors that are just horrible contractors? So today, for my Contractors Pro Tip of the week, I'm going to talk about 5 reasons why people have horrible contractors, right? 5 reasons why people have horrible contractors. So the first thing that most people tend to run into when you have a horrible contractor is a contractor with lack of experience, right? So what does that mean, right? Unfortunately, the contractual business isn't super stringent on educational guidelines, right? So a doctor, you have to go through an insurmountable time of school. To be an attorney, you have to pass the bar exam. To even be a real estate agent, you have to take classes for a certain amount of hours and then pass basically 2 tests. To be a contractor, it's a lot different, right? You have to technically have some experience. You have to take an open book test, and then you can become a contractor for better or for worse, which unfortunately doesn't allow a lot of hands-on experience. I'm fortunate enough to have been doing construction since I was 13 years old. Yes, makes me sound old, but I've been doing construction since I was in high school, right? I went to Emerson Vocational High School where we were taught hands-on carpentry, brick masonry, plumbing, and electricity in all 4 phases of construction. I did it for 4 years, and then I also have a construction management minor at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. So construction is my life. I've been doing this my entire life, but there are a lot of contractors that don't really have real experience in being a contractor. So what happens is somebody makes a doghouse out back and they fix the doorknob and they did very well with the honey to-do list. And guess what? I'm a contractor and I'm going to get my license and I'm going to start fixing people's stuff. And unfortunately, that has become a big problem with a lot of people that run into horrible contractors. So reason number 1, man, a contractor does not have the adequate experience to be a real, true contractor. Well, as I give you the problem, I'm also going to give you the solution, right? So what you need to do to avoid finding contractors that don't have the experience, that lack the experience, is the first thing you need to do is do a background search, right? Make sure that this person is licensed, right? Make sure he has a resume, ask to see some of the work that he's done, but more importantly, get referrals or try to do business with contractors that you know have done business with somebody that you know, right? So referrals are very important, extremely important. Majority of my business comes from referrals. I market a ton, but referrals are very important. So if somebody that you know and trust can vouch for this contractor, then at least you have one leg in the door to say, this person told me this person was good. Trying to find a person out of the yellow pages or that has no history, that you can't verify his work, is a appetite for disaster, and I would stay away from it. So first thing in terms of figuring out if a contractor is a horrible contractor is the lack of experience. The second thing that I find is a problem, and hence the reason why a lot of contractors are terrible or horrible contractors, is A lot of contractors don't know how to make a budget, right? Well, what does that mean? When you have experience as a contractor, especially 25, 26 years, you understand material cost, you understand hard cost, you understand labor cost, you understand ancillary costs, you understand profit. And unfortunately, if you're not a contractor that has been around for a while, you don't know how to budget all 4 or 5 of those things to give your client a realistic number, right? So what does that mean? You give a client a random number, right? A project that should be $100,000, you tell them that the project's going to be $40,000. And then when you start peeling back the meat and potatoes of the project, you realize that the hard cost is $75,000 and you've only budgeted $40,000. And now the client's looking at you like, why isn't my job finished? And the contractor has either completely left the job, has completely lied, or the job has been prolonged for so long because they're trying to get other projects to basically cover the expenses for this project because they did not know how to budget. So reason number 2 is contractors that don't know how to budget jobs. I see it all the time. I have people that will call me and I say, I had a contractor to come out and he gave me this number. And I'm looking at them like, that's not a realistic number. And quite frankly, if you took that number, I would be very afraid. Again, being as though I am a seasoned contractor and I've budgeted both commercial and residential pretty much all over the country, I understand what true cost looks like. Though it can be very expensive sometimes, especially with tariffs and a lot of stuff that's going on, you get what you pay for. So oftentimes I tell clients, well, if you decide to go with that contractor, that's perfectly fine. But if I were you at that price point, I would be a little concerned. I never say anything bad about a contractor. I never say anybody's stupid. But because I understand true cost of construction, I'm very, very clear and concise about what the cost should be. So reason number 2 is a contractor that does not know how to budget a project. Now, how do you avoid that? Well, you always get 2 to 3 different estimates, right? I would go in with a high-end company that's completely out of your price range that you know that you may not be able to afford, just to get a gauge on what the price looks like. And then I would go with whoever your person is, and then I would go with just a third person that you have no idea who this person is to see how you compare the prices. I would also get a mentor, somebody who's worked in the business, maybe an investor, another realtor, or somebody who has some level of real estate construction knowledge. They don't have to be a contractor, but at least have done enough projects to be able to give you an idea on if the price that you have makes sense, too far off, close, or completely ridiculous. The other thing that I would do is, if you are an investor and you've done a few projects, I would compare your previous invoices to the invoice that you have, right? You can look on Home Depot, you can look on Lowe's, and you can see the cost of certain material. The labor cost is what kind of questions, because labor is all relative, right? If I'm Maybach of construction, then my fees are going to be a little bit higher than the Honda Accord of construction. So it just depends on who you're doing business with. But as I always say, you get what you pay for. So I would definitely compare the prices with other contractors. I would definitely ask people that I trust, whether it be another contractor or a mentor. And I would also keep old invoices to just compare apples to apples to see what you come up with. The third reason is the contractor is financially constrained. Well, what does that mean? That means the contractor is broke, right? A lot of contractors, no different than people that work day to day, they live check to check, right? So they're robbing from Peter to pay Paul. They're working from job to job to job. And it could be tough because if the contractor doesn't already have funds set aside to cover some of the ancillary expenses that he'll have to pay before he's paid, guess who pot he's digging in to make sure those things are paid? Rent, mortgage, car note, everything under the sun. So if he doesn't already have a savings or enough jobs coming in to be able to cover costs, or if he hasn't budgeted the job appropriately, then guess what? The money that needs to go toward that stuff is going to come out of your job. So now he's penny pinching off of your project to pay other things, to now he doesn't have the money to pay for your job. Or he's trying to wait on the next job to come in that's going to carry over to the next job, that's going to carry over to the next job. And what happens is sometimes the next job doesn't come as fast as he needs it to come. So what happens? The contractor ends up even leaving the job, or the project gets delayed because he just doesn't have the money. So that means he's financially constrained. Well, how do we avoid that, right? What do you do? Now, some people will ask for bank statements from a contractor. Is that common? No. But what you do is you stipulate how much money you're going to pay out to the contractor to make sure certain phases of the project is complete before you give him more money, right? So a lot of banks do this. A lot of 203K, I do a ton of 203Ks. A lot of banks, a lot of mortgage companies, a lot of financial and insurance institutions. Before they give you money, you have a fee schedule. You have a project schedule that you have to complete certain things on the project before I give you more money, right? And if these things are not done, then I'm not going to allocate more money. By law, a lot of people don't know that projects have to be paid in thirds. Doesn't have to be equal thirds, but it has to be at least thirds, not half, not one to payment, but thirds. So I'll either do thirds, fourths, or fifths, depending on the size of a project here at Immaculate Home Builders. You do what you may, but that's how I operate. But in most cases, there is a construction schedule of work that needs to be completed. And in the first phase, if someone gives me, say, 50 grand, X amount of things need to be done before I come back and ask for that second draw statement. So to avoid having to deal with the contractor that's going to take your money and leave, you make sure that in your agreements, there is a draw schedule based on the work that's completed to avoid this contractor taking your money and leaving. Unfortunately, people are financially stricken. Life happens, but that's not your problem. If your budget is to allocate toward a certain amount of work that needs to be done, then that's where the money needs to go. So I see that a lot. I see people that are very upset. They'll come to me and say, I was dealing with this contractor and he completely took my money. And a lot of times it's because the contractor is financially constrained. So you put that in place. You can also have a bank to allocate the funds to the contractor, because if they know more about that side of the business than you, then they're going to protect your interests and they're going to protect their interests to make sure that you are not getting screwed. The fourth thing is there are too many jobs they're working on. So if a contractor has 4, 5, 6 jobs and he doesn't have enough manpower, he doesn't have an infrastructure, and he flat out just doesn't know what the hell he's doing, then obviously he's trying to move around too many jobs at one time, right? Me personally at Immaculate Home Builders, I definitely would never take on more projects than I could handle, because time is money. So I've seen this happen a lot, to where projects can go from literally it's supposed to take 2 months and it takes a year. Or projects. As a matter of fact, I met a young lady today when I was picking up some flooring, and she was trying to get her bathroom done, and a bathroom that should have took maybe a month, month and a half, actually a month, if not even a month. She said she's at the 5-month mark, which I thought was insane, but it happens. And a lot of times it's because that contractor is trying to do too many jobs. He, one, does not have enough manpower. 2, his infrastructure, he does not have an infrastructure. Or more importantly, he's just not managing his time appropriately. So it's really important to ask a contractor, how many jobs are you working on? How many jobs can you handle? Now, the caveat is, will this person tell the truth? Well, maybe, but now you have the right to hold them accountable for what they told you. But this is how you avoid that also, right? So what you want to do when you need to know if a contractor has too many jobs is you tell them that there is a cost per day, per diem, for every day that they are over your job. Well, what does that mean? That means that if you tell me this job should be done in 6 weeks and a job is not done in 6 weeks, then any day after 6 weeks moving forward, you owe me anywhere between $50 to $100 per day that the job runs over. So what that does is it lights a fire under the contractor to hold them accountable, to make sure that if you said my job is going to be done in 6 weeks, my job needs to be done in 6 weeks. If it goes a day over 6 weeks, every day thereafter, you owe me $100, which now eats into their profit and now can put them in a situation, and you can hold them accountable and take them to court and so on. Now, the other thing that a lot of people don't know is you should always check to make sure that the person has a real MHIC license, Maryland Home Improvement Commission license. Ask for the number. You can do research. You can see if they've been sued. You can see if they have any lawsuits. You can do research on the LLC. You can do your research on this person just to make sure that you are working with a reputable person in that line of business, because again, it's your money. It's your livelihood. You don't want to be in a bad situation where you're getting screwed. So that's number 4. They are taking on too many jobs. And number 5, unfortunately, is they just very well may be a scam artist. And unfortunately, that's not a whole lot that you can do about that if the person is just a bad person. We all have ran into scam artists in every walk of life that we've been a part of. It's an unfortunate thing. Now, how do you avoid that, right? You always do your homework, right? You ask a bunch of questions. You see how knowledgeable the person is. You check the credibility. You do a background search. You do everything in your power to make sure that you know enough about this person from a credible standpoint to avoid potentially being scammed. Now, does it guarantee? Well, nothing guarantees. But in my experience, when you, one, get a referral from somebody that you know and trust, and two, you do your research, that weeds out scammers, because if you have questions about something that you very well may see, then you can ask that person, well, I pulled up your record. I see that your company has been, sued for this. Can you explain that to me? Can you give me some explanation? Do you have any paperwork? And now it's up to you to decide if you want to continue to do business with that person or not. But at least you have a point of reference to decide, do I want to work with this person? Do I trust this person or not, right? I welcome all of my clients to do that. Pull up any information, ask me any questions. Let's go out for coffee. Let's have lunch. I'll be willing to answer any questions that you very well may have to make sure that you know that I'm a stand-up guy. And then lastly, make sure that you have a thorough contract in place. Even if the person gives you a contract, make sure you read it over thoroughly. Make sure that you guys have a clear understanding of what that looks like before you do business, because your paperwork is going to be what helps you if anything happens and you guys have to go to court. So never do business, especially from a contractual standpoint, without legal paperwork. Because it breaks my heart to see people with their hard-earned money that lose it to contractors, or people in general that are just not stand-up, outright good character people. People work hard for their money, and I'm not one of those people. But in order for me to help people like you avoid what that looks like, these are at least 5 things to look out for, how to avoid it, and these are some of the reasons on why contractors are horrible. C. Brown, Manufacturing Home Builders, you know who to call if you are looking for a quality, reasonable contractor, especially if you are looking for a pre-listed, pay-at-close. We are the equity savers. We come in, we do the work up front, we get paid on the back end. We want to make sure that we're saving people equity. We specialize in that. So if any realtors, tag one of your realtors, tell them who we are, tag somebody who's looking for a contractor, let them know that there are some good contractors still out here. We're very reputable. We can get it done, and we're very budget friendly. C. Brown and Macklin Home Builders, man. I will talk to you soon.